In Chapter 9, we're going to look at forms and adding controls to those forms. I went ahead and created a blank document in code, saved it as hp9-1.html, and used our exclamation point tab shortcut to get our basic content in, and changed the title to Form Example. Okay, so what is a form? If you have signed up for an email address, if you have ordered something online and added your shipping information, you have completed a form. Most all of you have at some point completed a form online. A form is a really neat way for us to create a way for the user to give us information. When we create a form, we use the form tag. Let's start with H1 though first. Let's do H1, join our newsletter. Now when we create a form, we always use the form tag. The opening form tag has some attributes that we should consider, and one is required for a valid form according to HTML5. If you look on page 401 in your book, it will tell you the attributes that we can use on the form tag. One is the action. The action tag is actually required. It would look something like this. The action tag tells the form where to go to be processed. The form in and of itself doesn't do much. It allows the user to enter information, but the back end side, the server side, is where that information is processed. So let's say you were ordering some things from a website. Your shipping would need to be calculated, your taxes would need to be calculated, your order total would need to be calculated, and all of that happens on the server side. That doesn't happen in your terminal, in your computer. It happens on the server that is processing that form. So you would have something that looks like this. Now, we don't look at server-side development in this class. We look at client-side development. So we can't really do anything with this. Just know that we should have that there, okay? The other thing that we should consider is the method attribute. The method attribute can have two values, either get or post. Get appends the information to the URL as it's sending that information back and forth across the network. That means it's really easily for someone to get that URL and get all that information that was sent in that form. So get is not very secure at all. Post is a more safe method. Post appends all the data that we're going to put in this form, that the user puts in this form. It puts it in the body of the HTML and then sends it. So it's harder to for a hacker or sniffer to get to that information. You usually will also have some kind of ID, so let's do include this. IDs are going to be important as we move closer to learning about JavaScript. So let's just do news form for our ID. You could include a name, and you could also have an autocomplete on and off. So those are the 5 attributes that we can add to our form. Okay, so once we are inside of our form, we're going to just have, as we start off, just a really simple form. We are going to have a control that allows the user to enter an email address. For this, we would use a text box control. Now, later on, we're going to learn how to modify this form to make it a little better. But for right now, let's just type the word email. And then we're going to add a text box to our document so that the user could enter their email. To do this, we use an input tag. Lots of our controls that we have in forms use the input tag. The difference is the type. For a textbook, for a text box, not a textbook, the type is text. We may also include a name. This is good for server-side processing. It's good for JavaScript. We might also have an ID. Now, the ID always needs to be unique. There needs to be only one thing that has this ID on our document, but the names can be duplicated. Okay, so let's just add a couple of breaks here. Again, later on, I'm going to show you better ways to do this. And if we refresh our document, we now have a text box here. So we can type things into that text box just like you would on a normal website. Not too bad, right? Okay, usually a form would have some sort of button. So to create a button, again, we use the input type. Now there is a button tag. We'll look at that later. But using the input tag, type equals submit, causes some of this built-in functionality that our browsers already know about to work to help validate our form. So if we do type equals submit and we just leave it like that and refresh our browser, take a look at what it looks like. So it's a button that says submit. And it will actually submit the form. You'll see very quickly this form is refreshing. That's some of the stuff that happens in the browser. We don't even code it to do that. It just knows to do it because we have smart browsers now. But what if we didn't want it to say submit? What if we wanted it to say something else? Well, we can change the value attribute. If we set the value attribute to sign me up, exclamation point, and refresh our browser, now our button says that, okay? So you could change the value. Now, we also may want a way to reset the form. So if the user types something in the field, the text box field, we may want to reset that. So we can do that with input type equals reset. Now you could add, we could leave it like this. We could just do reset. Let's refresh it in the browser. And we have a reset, excuse me. And if we type anything, it resets automatically thanks to our browser. Our browser does that for us. But we could also give it a value of clear form. And then our button would say something else, clear form. Okay, so it's not too bad. You just want to make sure that we type all of this content inside of our form.